welcome, and don't get weirded out if I know your names before we've already spoken. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the bid. Some of you might kind of know a bit about what we do already, but we are Norwich Business Improvement District. We are funded and managed by just over 700 businesses in Norwich city centre. And really what we do is kind of work on their behalf as, I guess, a sort of collaborative agent to kind of make big and meaningful change in the city centre. So we work on everything from managing the city's tourism marketing to putting on big, free and accessible light festivals. Hopefully you came and enjoyed Love Light. Yeah, yes, good, some nods, a few. To supplying businesses with radios and helping kind of fight business crime as much as we are able. So a really, really wide breadth of projects, a really kind of interesting place, and kind of all here with the idea of kind of supporting businesses and helping them grow. So we are running these talks as part of a project that we're doing called Onwards Norwich, which is all about delivering fully funded training to businesses, and that's everything from hospitality qualifications all the way through to supporting them with digital skills. And so I'm really, really excited to be working with Lucy on kind of delivering these talks as part of that programme, here to kind of help people network and see people in real life again, thank goodness, but also kind of to learn some valuable kind of business lessons and hear some fun and exciting stories from, you know, people in our community as well. So lastly, hopefully there's no fire. If there's a fire, we'll all be going outside, and you'll know because there'll be a fire alarm, but that's not supposed to be happening. And toilets are in the forum at the back, so out and then back in, all the way at the back. So, on the toilet note, thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for coming. It's lovely to see so many of you today. So I'm Lucy Marks and I run the Norfolk Network. We're an active and connected business membership community for founders and directors, academics and students, and some forward-thinking businesses. And we come together to share knowledge, to learn, to share our knowledge, and to make those trusted relationships that will really help us progress in our careers and in our businesses. So I spend my days discovering people and championing them and connecting them, so that they can sort of feel part of a local community. And I also provide a lot of platforms for people to talk. So we have member-only get-togethers, and we also have public webinars, and we're going back to in-person, face-to-face keynote speakers and panel events, which is really exciting. And this is a new platform for us, which has been really amazing. It's I feel it's very fresh and new, and it's been very popular. It's TED-style short talks. And I think for all of us, I think it's been really good to get out again and meet face-to-face and not in huge groups. This is really good. A nice bright sort of in the city centre. So for me, it's been great to meet new people and to showcase some of our real kind of young innovators, academics with really great research ideas, and some visionary leaders who can share a lot of knowledge. So something happening every Tuesday until the end of June, so I've had my work cut out, and it's been great fun. So I'm really thrilled today that Tom is going to be talking to end our first series of Norwich Talks Up Business. Now Tom is a very well loved and respected member of the local business community. And I can give you £5.
Yeah, thank you.
And he's been working over 15 years, I think, in the sort of digital UX space. And I'm really pleased today that he's taken a slightly different slant to talking, and he's going to give us an insight into how it's been in his last 7 years and how he started a business. And I think it's been great over the pandemic, over the last 2 years, sort of talking and being reassured and discussing lots of different topics, especially around mental health and around sort of working, remote working. So I'm really excited because I've never really heard this story. No one has. So over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lucy. Well, I hope I can do that introduction some justice. So yeah, my name's Tom. I noticed that you didn't attempt the surname. And I think
I've always called you Tom H.
Most people do. It's fine. Yeah, so I'm Tom Haczewski. I run a company called The User Story. Can you hear me at the back all right? It's not like I have a quiet voice, but you know, just to check. So I've been running a company called The User Story for about 7 years or so. And you know, this is something where we've kind of had consistent growth over the last 7 years, both in terms of revenue and people. We're now 7 people as well. It's 1 a year. We've managed to win a few awards for some of the work that we've done. We've worked with companies from big multinational household brands right the way down to startups and brand new companies that haven't got anything at all. And we've done some things that we're super proud of. We've lectured at universities. We've written courses for universities. We've done all sorts of really interesting things. And so obviously I've come from, as you can imagine, the completely traditional background, right? I started with market research. I looked at what other companies were doing. I found a niche. I wrote a 5-year business plan, as you'd expect. I went out and found some angel investors, and a rich uncle gave me 200 grand so that I could start the business, and then found some angel investors for a couple of million. Did a really good, successful viral marketing campaign in the first year. I'm not selling this, am I? Yeah, no, we didn't do any of that stuff at all, not one of them. So this is a bit of an unusual talk to me, because normally what I do is I talk about the stuff that we do, which is really interesting and exciting. And it's probably the reason we're still going after 7 years, is that we do things that are quite unique and interesting to the area. And most of it is in digital psychology. We look at how people actually use the tools that you use day to day. We look at how people access websites, the sorts of behaviours that people exhibit. And so most of the time when I'm talking, I talk about the Zeigarnik effect, or how people behave when they're using checkout flows, or why men gravitate to looking at the groins of animals when they're looking at photography. All sorts of interesting behavioural psychology. So actually a talk like this is really different, because this is how the business works. And for me, I've never really considered myself to be a businessman. I run a business, but I'm not a businessman. That's what people in suits do. And I don't really know how to do that stuff. So when I was growing up, I always wanted to be a doctor. I'd come from a medical family, and so I kind of thought, that's probably what I should do, right? Is I should just go into the family profession almost, and be a doctor or something. So I did all that stuff. I learned stuff at GCSE that I basically hated. And then everything went a bit wrong when I was about 16, and I actually was kicked out of my home. So I was technically homeless for a short while. I lived with a few people who were kind enough to sort of put me up, and everything sort of fell apart a bit. And I failed my A-levels. I don't have any A-levels. I couldn't go to university. And I went into work. So I started working in retail. I went and, I've done things like preparing your salads and pizzas in Morrison's, and I, ended up stacking shelves in a cash and carry. And it all sort of felt like it was going a bit wrong. So when I started looking for jobs, I had no idea what to do at all. My sort of saving grace was in the background of all this. I was lucky enough to have a computer when I was younger. So I was always a bit of a dabbler, and I'd learned how this thing worked. And I think I built my first website when I was about 11 on a CD-ROM, which is weird. But I didn't know how the internet stuff worked, but I did know how to put an HTML site together. And yeah, very strange. But so I'd always kind of tinkered with computers, but I'd never considered it as a career. I never thought that there was anything in there over a hobby. I thought it was just something that they did for fun, and that was kind of it. So that really didn't come to mind. So my first job that I thought was a proper job was when I applied for, and I got a role at Virgin Money in their call centre. And they were going to pay me £11,500 on a salary, which I was absolutely made up by, because it was the first time I'd ever been salaried. I was like, these guys, they don't know what they're doing. I could do anything all day, and they're not going to be checking my time. I don't have to clock in. This is great. It was a brilliant, brilliant job, and the people there were amazing. And after 6 months, I was made redundant as they closed the call centre. So I felt a bit like I'd been let down, and again, I was a bit stuck. I didn't really know what to do. During that sort of 6 months, I'd spent a bit of time putting together some little internal websites for like the internal poker league and things like that. And somebody across the company said, we've noticed that you're doing that stuff. We've got a position over here that you might be all right for. Do you want to apply? And it turned out it was a role for an e-commerce marketing analyst. Has anyone heard of that? I mean, I had no idea what this was. But it turns out what that is essentially the job I do now. It is a UX person. And the interesting thing about this, which I luckily managed to get this job, the interesting thing about it was that it was a mix of everything. So I got to design websites, I got to build stuff, I got to do a bit of marketing, a bit of SEO. It really was a bit of a melting pot of all sorts of different things. But crucially, one of the things they did really well was research. They had an internal research lab where we brought people in, we watched how they used websites, we understood their behaviours, and then we used those learnings to then iterate and build. So I, at that point, had kind of assumed that that was how the internet worked. Everybody did research and built those research findings into their websites. Great, this is awesome. I think it was at that point that I realised actually it wasn't really the money that was driving me, it was the kind of work and the kind of values that the company had. And when I joined Virgin Money, the MD at the time was very people-focused. He wanted people to be at the heart of everything that we did. And all of the products and services that Virgin Money did at the time were designed for people. They were designed to be revolutionary and innovative. And you know, the reason why stakeholder pensions are so good now, or certainly have been for the last 10 years before COVID and things, is because of Virgin Money, because of the things that they were doing back then. They allowed people to explore this area and just build amazing products. And when the MD changed, they brought someone in who, I know people say, oh, it changed overnight. It literally did change overnight because we were told to go home because we were wearing jeans and come back in trousers. That I thought, oh, I don't know if this is the right place for me anymore, because the values totally changed. And it felt like actually you're not too interested in the work anymore. You're not too interested in what we're doing for people. You actually care about what it looks like when we're doing those things, and you care about the profits rather than the values. So I started looking for another job to do. A friend of mine had basically left and created an agency and asked me to join as the head of, I think it was head of digital, I think he called it. It was just me, it was me and him. It felt amazing. I also, this is a side note which I won't go into, but I also had joined another company. I'd been headhunted for a week. It didn't like me very much when I then said, sorry, I've got this other job that I have to go and do now. But that's another story. So I went and joined this, and I learned so much over about 5 or 6 years working at a company called MMK, which now no longer exists. They're now Brew Digital. And I basically learnt so much. I learned I'd never worked in an agency, so I had to work out how that all worked. I'd never known how to pitch work. I didn't know how you sort of paid for stuff, or how people paid for stuff. I learned how web worked. I learned more in terms of marketing and all sorts of stuff. We worked on amazing projects from HASTA to HMV. And I also learned how to run a team, which I'd never done before. Obviously it started as just me, but then I ended up having to hire a few people, and unfortunately when things didn't go so well, I had to let people go. And it was a really tricky but incredible time over the sort of 5 years. But I think the thing that I learned through that was that it was my moral framework and those values that still drove everything that I was doing. And I realised when I left that at no point in the sort of, I think it was 5.5, 6 years that I'd worked there, had I ever had a pay rise. But at no point had I ever asked for one, because I didn't care. I was just doing things that I enjoyed, and just doing things because I loved it, because it was the right thing to do. So when it came to the point where the owner of the business left, he decided he was going to go and do some other things. He'd left me and the head of strategy in charge of this place, and I went, I don't want to run a company. This is not what I'm here for. I want to do what I'm good at, which is this. I want to do this research stuff that I've not been able to do because we're running a more traditional agency. I want to do more of this digital stuff. I don't really want to run a company. So I started looking for other things. And this is where the user story came from, completely by accident. I found a contract. I thought, I'm going to leave, but I'm going to go into contracting so I can work out what I want to do. I'll do a few little things, and then maybe I'll find my way. And so naturally, I looked for places locally. Aviva popped up, and they asked if I would like to contract for them for a little while in their UX team. So I went, yeah, that sounds great, and I said yes. And then 2 weeks later, after I'd handed in my notice, they said, actually, we can't give you a contract role anymore because we're not allowed to take on any contractors. But we'll give you the permanent position. And I stupidly said no. Why would you do that when you have no money? You have no money at all, you've got no clients. I had nothing else in the pipeline at all. But I thought, I don't want to leave a job that I loved to go and do a job that is just not going to meet that. And I don't want to sit here for, you know, X years, which I think is one of those. I don't want to criticise Aviva. Is anyone from Aviva in here? Yeah, screw them. Let's criticise Aviva. I didn't really want to get stuck there for like 3 years and then become a bit of a lifer and all that kind of stuff, which I think a lot of people do tend to do. Sorry, I didn't want to do that, so I turned it down. So I had about £5,000 on my credit limit, my credit card, and that was it. So I went into panic mode. I applied for every possible freelance position I could find. I thought, well, I've got a few skills, I can build websites, I can do some stuff. I picked up a job, I think I remember it was, they were called the Little Foxes Club, I think, in London, which was a tiny little sports club for kids, and I redesigned their website. And then I applied for a contract, another contract, which I thought, if I get this, maybe what I can do is I can ask them if maybe they'll let me work a few days a week on this, but then I can do some other stuff and like see what else is out there. So I spoke to these two lovely ladies from a recruitment agency, which at the time was relatively new, called R13. And turns out the job was for Virgin Wines. And so I was very lucky that I negotiated my way into a weird contract position where I basically said, look, I'll do a few days a week here and I'll do this, and then, you know, I'll see what else I can do. Of course, if you've ever worked in contracting or freelancing or anything, there's a few different ways that you can collect invoices and get paid, but I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll create a limited company, I'll call it something weird, I don't know, the user story? That kind of sounds fine. It was a bit of a play on words because I like to do user research, but also user stories are a thing that you write if you are building stuff for development teams. So I was like, it's kind of fine, user story limited. I mean, no one's ever going to see it because it will be on an invoice somewhere, like no one cares. And that is who we are now. The user story has come out of something which was completely accidental. I didn't mean to do it. I have never, to this point, written any business plan. There was no plan at all. It's completely come out of a sort of accidental series of events, really. But I think over the sort of first few years, we realised that we'd found our niche really quickly, and that was our research. Every contract that I went for in those early days, the differentiator was that I didn't just do what I thought was right. We went and did research. We actually worked out what users needed, and then we built those things. It was always built into everything that we did. It was this sort of research and evidence-led approach. And that's driven everything that we do today. Everything that we do now is still evidence-led. Everything we do is still research first. And it means that it sets us apart. And it's not something that we really realised at the time, but it is completely our niche and our differentiator. So there's lots of things that I've learned over the last few years. As you can imagine, I still don't consider myself to be a businessman. I don't really know how this works. But the things I do know are my values. The values that we wrote a few years ago are not something that we just put on a poster and stick up on a wall. They're things that are built into everything we do. We talk about them every week in our catch-ups, we talk about them in our quarterly reviews, we talk about them when we hire people. It's built into literally everything we do. I'm definitely a people person first. I don't really understand any of the numbers. So when I kind of realised that I had to get paid, but I also probably had to pay tax at some point, the first thing I did was call an accountant maybe, and then the accountant sort of sorted all that stuff out. We're not a numbers focused company at all, we're very much people first. I realised that very early on when we were doing things for the first time, we were trying to document everything. If you do something for the first time, document it. And then the next time you can learn. And I realised that when we're working with clients, one of the things we do is a test, iterate and learn approach. So we want to try something, put it out as quickly as we can, see how people sort of operate with that thing, and then make improvements and try it again. And that's the way you build really good websites, experiences and so on. We've been doing that with our company for the last 7 years. We try something, we document it so we know what we did, and then if it works or it doesn't work, we will always do some sort of retrospective. We'll look at what worked and didn't work, and we'll see if we can tweak it and improve it next time. So actually, just doing what we do for work and building it into the way that we run our company has worked really well for us. I think the biggest thing, though, is to be flexible, understanding, and kind with people. And I'm a really big believer that businesses don't do business with businesses. They do business with people. People do business with people. And so one of our values is about the way that we deal with people. We build real relationships with people. We don't have account managers because we don't want to have disconnect between the people that you're going to be working with and you. The point is you're working with us as people, and we treat you like people. I suppose the other thing is we've never at any point compared ourselves with anybody else. I don't know if this is perhaps something that other businesses do because they're kind of told to. You're told to look at your competition and see how you can stay ahead. And we've never really done that because we didn't really think we had much competition, because actually if you look around in the region at UX companies here that do specifically what we do, I mean, it's foolproof, and that's kind of it. And they are working on such a huge scale compared to us that they just didn't really feel like a competitor. And it may well be that we have competitors now, but actually what we do is we compare ourselves to ourselves. We don't actually look at what others are doing, we're just trying to always improve ourselves instead. And that's really set us in good stead, I think, and we just have improved over the last few years because of it. I think the last thing I'd say is trust in my gut. I think, again, there's lots of space for numbers and there's lots of space for the analysis and making sure that the numbers are right and things look okay and all that kind of stuff. But the decisions that we've made that have been wrong have been the ones where we've looked at how our gut feels and we've not done that. We've done something else. That has always gone wrong. I think as a business owner, actually as a human being, there are psychological effects. Your body is designed to give you warning signs when something looks and feels wrong, right? You just don't feel right. And it's there for a reason. And I think if you're particularly tuned into just the way that you're doing things in your company, you're going to know when something's wrong. And the times when we've ignored that is the times when it has gone wrong. So yeah, we've definitely learned that. So before I wrap up, one thing I definitely would say is I'm very keen on understanding one's privilege. And I think even though, you know, I didn't have a massive trust fund, I literally was in debt when I started the company, I didn't have the opportunities perhaps lined up and all those sorts of things. I do know I look like this. I look like a white man. I mean, the beard wasn't there at the time, nice sort of fluffy, friendly beard, but I look like this, which means that I am more likely to have opportunities that perhaps other people won't. And so it's why I'm a staunch, or one of the reasons why I'm a staunch feminist. I've been surrounded by amazing women for the last 7 years when I've been running the business, and before that, and you know, huge diverse ranges of people who have helped me all this time. And I think it's why it's so important that we highlight people and stories of those who perhaps haven't had the opportunities of people like me, so that we understand that actually it isn't that easy for a lot of people. I have fallen into this, and I got lucky. But I think a lot of people have to work incredibly hard to do the same thing, really, that people like me would have to do. Anyway, so yeah, what's next for us? I guess the first thing is this is the first time we've actually written a plan. So we do actually have a plan for the next 2 years, but it's still not a plan for numbers. It's still not a plan for revenue. We've got a plan for sustainability. So what we want over the next 2 years is to build a team where everyone feels like they can learn from each other, or they can teach someone else, where they feel like they know what their growth is going to be, where they feel like if they need to take a day off or they want to take a holiday, that they can do that and not feel like they're putting anyone under pressure, which I think in a small team is really difficult to handle. And we want to be more sustainable for the planet as well. We've just joined 1% for the Planet, which I definitely encourage you to look at. It's a scheme by which you provide 1% of your revenues, not profits, 1% of your revenue to sustainability charity, which we're pledging to do. Yeah, and then I guess I'll see what I've accidentally fallen into next. Thanks very much.